Hi, welcome to Jesus TV and Jesus Radio simulcast. This evening's episode is the first episode. It's episode 1, and it's called Amazing. So we expect it to be an amazing episode. I'm Greg Muller, and this is Jonathan McCormick right above me. And he's in Arizona. I'm in Spring City, Utah. We're in Jesus's studio, and it's in the manger scene. So it's a low production, but it is a high aim. And what we aim to do tonight is start an entirely new television program. And so I think it's appropriately named Amazing. And I will now start out with a song that is going to be the focus of this episode. And then we'll introduce other parts of this. I kept the right ones out and let the wrong ones in. Had an angel of mercy to see me through all of my sins. There were times in my life when I was going insane, trying to walk through the pain. When I lost my grip and I hit the floor, yeah, I thought I could leave, but couldn't get out of the door. I was so sick and tired of living a lie. I was wishing that I would die. Then Jesus saved me. In the blink of an eye, I finally saw God's light. Then Jesus saved me. When that moment arrived, I knew I'd be all right. Yeah, Jesus saved me. And I'm saying a prayer for the desperate hearts tonight. I lost my way in rambling temptations. And how high can you fly with broken wings? Life's a journey, not a destination. And I just can't tell just what tomorrow brings. You have to learn to crawl before you learn to walk. But I just couldn't listen to all that righteous talk. I was out on the street just trying to survive, scratching to stay alive. Then Jesus saved me. In the blink of an eye, I finally saw God's light. Then Jesus saved me. When that moment arrived, I knew I'd be all right. Yeah, Jesus saved me. And I'm saying a prayer for the desperate hearts tonight. Desperate hearts, you wandering in the dark. It's time to cry out to Jesus. Save me, save me. Seek Jesus with all your might, and he will save. And then there's a little scat. Come on, save you. Come to Jesus, desperate hearts. Then Jesus saved me. Then Jesus saved me. In the blink of an eye, I finally saw God's light. Then Jesus saved me. When that moment arrived, I knew I'd be all right. Yeah, Jesus saved me. And I'm saying a prayer for the desperate hearts tonight. Come to Jesus now, all you lonely, so weary, desperate hearts. And so that was a a cappella version of that song. It's also what's called a baptized song. So Aerosmith, through that'd be Steven Tyler, he's the lead singer of Aerosmith, and his friend Richie Supa. Um, they wrote that song together. Both of them have had difficulties. God called them into addictions. They fell into addictions, call it what you want. They had experiences with very powerful dark forces, and they found that which the song expresses, and they are recovering addicts. And so the focus of this episode is framed by that song, and we will talk about it. I actually Jonathan scripted, when I got up from my Jesus nap today, I scripted a little bit for this. Let's see, I shall find it. Let's see, episode 1, there we go, for this episode. So Jonathan didn't know this, surprised him. He wasn't surprised by the song. That song, we both recommend that you could engage with that song best by going to YouTube, and then you would search for this phrase, Richie Supa, Richie, Supa, S-U-P-A, on the story of Recovery Unplugged. And so that song and that interaction actually led to a formal system. It's interesting, but Richie Supa uses music as music therapy. So I sent that because Jesus told me to send that to you, Jonathan. What did you think of that Recovery Unplugged explanation?
I really appreciate it. I like it better than anything I'd seen, and it gave a lot of context as to where where it came out of, where the song came out of, the thoughts. I liked it.
Yeah, I love Jonathan's comment before we started. He says that song in its raw form, unbaptized form, borders on pornography. And I didn't see it the same, but I'm a dirty, filthy, rotten, hard-hearted, hopeful sinner, but I'm also a connoisseur. Jesus has been feeding me, well, I've been eating classic rock since I was younger. And so there's different temperaments for that. So I kind of smiled inside. I'm like, yeah, that's a nothing burger. But I respected Jonathan's taste there. And so
I have to clarify, it was actually the music video.
Yeah,
the
well,
music
yeah,
video.
That's right.
They're kind of portraying a young man who's got a pornography addiction, but it's like they leave very little to the imagination. And I knew that certain people would find that.
Well,
I'll be honest, I found it a little bit like, whoa, that was pretty intense.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't go and watch that. I remember that episode now. So that video. So sex sells. So that's what somebody, probably their producer, and I'm sure they signed off on it. They're fine with that. So yeah, no, with regards to the video, I'd probably agree. So go ahead and watch it on YouTube if you want. Aerosmith, amazing. But the one we gave you is a better one.
It's a G-rated one.
Yeah, the G-rated one, and it's the one that I care about. I like seeing Richie Supa. I kind of like seeing old, washed out rock stars that have been humbled. They're not trying to impress you anymore. They've got some good skills, but he's playing, it looks like, on his home piano, and sings it better than me. But that song has been important to me. Let's read this little episode intro, because I want to have the right frame for this this episode. And Jesus gave me that when I woke up. Okay. Suffer well, by his stripes we are healed. So that's the official title of this television program. We'll have many episodes. This is episode 1. And this is actually an announcement I put on Facebook. Jesus had me put an announcement. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. Hebrews 5:8. That, of course, is talking about Jesus. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. So Jesus was learning when he came down. Wasn't like, no, I know it all because I'm a God. He had to, because of his mission, go through a learning thing, at least for the human part of himself. And how did he learn? Let's read it again. Though he were a son, meaning the Son of God, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. Hebrews 5:8. Jesus is making a new television docudrama. This educational television program is now in the final stages of production at Jesus TV, almost ready for show. Episode 1, Amazing, is coming up this Sunday, and it is Sunday, June 26, 2022. Join us on a mysterious journey with Jesus, angels, and broken mortals as we explore in film, discussion, and direct experience how we each and our communities and our earth have been, are now, and will yet be healed when and if we can learn to suffer well. Sponsors and small donations are being sought now to offset the cost of this production. Donate only if and when Jesus tells you to. Okay, next thing was how this television program came about and what it's about and what it is not about. Well, Jonathan and I were reviewing in a different television program. One's called Poetry and Prophecy, and you can see that on Jesus TV at www.getmorejesus.com. And those episodes are also available at Jonathan's site. Tell them what your site is, Jonathan.
My site is thetracklesspath.com.
Thank you. And so I'm sorry I've got the talking stick so much this because I scripted it and didn't have a chance to even let Jonathan know that I was going to do this. Is it okay if I continue, Jonathan? All right. So we were going, we were reviewing and discussing one of the poems that Jesus had given Jonathan. And the name of that poem is called When Loss is Gain. So if you go there, you can watch episode 5. And it lit me up. As we did our discussion in this episode 5, the bell went off in my head and my heart when Jonathan said this phrase, suffer well, in relationship to that poem, when loss is gain. And Jonathan mentioned it's the most powerful technique in the world. And I really like techniques. I like technology. And I recognized it being true because it was what the Savior did. And you just saw that Hebrews 5:8. And then later this week, as I pondered it more, I realized that there is a technology, a power, a gift, and it is a gift that encapsulates this suffer well, in meaning there's one thing above suffer well, but it's part of this thing, and it's charity. And it is the final thing that is above all. Charity is also called love, so you might know it as love. But charity, the nice thing is it has a definition, and that was given by Jesus in the Bible. And so charity is, of course, the absolute most powerful. But listen to this definition of charity that Jesus spoke. And I want you to see the primacy of suffering in the character of charity. So you said, well, then what is charity? Listen to the very first thing it is. 1 Corinthians 13:4-7. Charity suffereth long. There you go. The first thing to define what love is. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemingly. Well, I'm already suffering already, Jonathan. Behaving myself unseemingly, that might be a little suffering. Seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in truth, beareth all things. There you go. The first part of charity kind of connects with the last. Beareth. Yeah, that kind of implies suffering. Believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Jonathan, I've got more, but I'm going to pause to see if you have any comments at this point.
No, go ahead.
When the term suffer well came into my mind, like I say, the bell went off, and I knew it was expressing something very true and mysterious about my own experience. When I became born again in 2015, I began to get closer to Jesus, or what I'd say, and Jesus would say, getting more Jesus in my life. And I noticed that there was simultaneous thing going on. The closer I got, there was elements of suffering associated with it. And sometimes that was waking up to my suffering. And in fact, waking up to the character of Jesus. I'm like, oh, Jesus, this is how you get close to me. and basically, I had to give him permission to continue. The phrase "suffer well" expresses simultaneously an instruction. See, I like that. Suffer well. You're telling, if you gave that phrase to me, then you'd be, in my mind, you'd be giving me an instruction. What should I do to have happiness in this life, Greg? Suffer well. You would say have charity too. But I like also that it's a simultaneous, and in this sense, like a yin and yang. It's the light and the dark. Suffer. And then we have that other word named well. So psychologists and sociologists have often studied well-being as a very important concept, because that's what you want in your life. Sure, riches, but well-being, a sense of well-being, very important. That's the light side. What about suffer? And so then they struggle with that. People who begin to wrestle with the nature of God. So philosophy 101 and so forth will focus on that. How could God be a good God if he lets this, and this go on? And that's what I was being apprised of as I got closer to Christ over since 2015, is that very nature. And so when that phrase came, suffer well, like, oh yeah, the words. And I was so grateful to Jesus and for Jonathan to frame that. So like I say, you'd have to go see episode 5 to see some of the elements of, because that poetry, Jonathan, you expressed, it has an invitation in my mind, inviting that suffering for a higher purpose of winning. And so in those two words expresses a wholeness, right? So if you just said, be well, and that's a good thing, be at peace. Jesus says things like that. Hey, suffer. Doesn't seem to fit, but it does. When you're moving down the road with Jesus, it's like, yeah, that's what it is. Suffer well. So the suffer part, let's see. Someone suffering well may be experiencing days, even years of wellness. It is well with my soul is a common song in Protestant land. But we could say, when you're well or have well-being, it is well with my money. It is well with my marriage. It is well with my health. God be praised. The reason they are well is because their marriage, they are suffering well with their spouse. Anybody who's married know, well, that wellness comes from, well, in my marriage, my wife suffers well. So I can sit there and talk to her about something that she's only at best mildly interested in, if maybe even worse. It's hard for her to hear how I talk about different things because I have a different style, as I've hinted, and as you've seen if you know who I am. And so it's not everybody's cup of tea. And yet my wife suffers it well. Oh my goodness, so well. And I compliment her on that. But yes, when a spouse goes on and on and on, because they're a broken spouse, then yeah, the other spouse is going to do some suffering. But if they suffer it well, it's healthy. And they're going to do that with their kids. I mean, my wife and I've talked about that when, you really think I want to sit down here and play toys with the kids? The answer is yes and no. So mothers suffer well. Things like, no, they probably don't want to have their personal selves really don't want to spend 2 hours reading a silly little book, but they do it. And they enjoy it, maybe for not the same reason that the child is enjoying it, but that's suffering well. And it is well with their money because they learn maybe how to get some. It's well with my money, but it might be they've learned to seek not their own. That they've learned that there's magic in actually sharing money And so it's well with them with their money, but maybe it's because they're not spending their money, though they want to. There's part of it just wants to take and use it themselves. I want to use that on myself. It's self time. I want to get my nails done, and then I want to get my hair done. I want to look good, but they go, and I'm so grateful I got this money because I could totally do that. But they've learned to suffer well and put maybe that as second, because maybe they notice someone, maybe not even in their family, that needs something, and maybe rather than getting their own nails done, they pay for somebody else's nails to get done, or maybe food or whatever. And so their money, their association with money, involves some suffering, some deprivation from not doing what they themselves want, but what the Holy Spirit's prompting them to do. And maybe it's they suffer putting off a trip to Europe or to Disneyland, and maybe they put it off not just while they're raising children or taking care of their aging parents, so they'll have enough money for that. But maybe they suffer it forever. They've always wanted to go to Disneyland, but they never do really get to go to Disneyland or Europe, the romance place. But they do it. If they suffer it well, you wouldn't think they're pained by it at all. That there was no deprivation at all, because they've learned to just be content. So part of suffering well is that suffering well by getting up in the morning. So there's the suffering of the body. Suffering well, maybe you are suffering well has brought you health, and it is well with you and well with your health because of some painful things you do every morning. You're stretching. Maybe you're old, maybe you're young. And stretching, is it pain-free? No, it has some tension. That's the nature of it. The body needs to stretch out. And how about the exercise itself? Would you like to stop when you get to mile 2? But you don't. You keep going. And there's a level of pain. And actually, people who teach sports, they'll talk about going through the pain or meeting the pain, ways in which to suffer well, so that you can do the full, whatever it is, if you're big and heavy, you made it around the whole block. And did it look like you were suffering? Well, if you're 500 pounds, I have a friend who was 500 pounds, and oh yeah, it was suffering, but he suffered well, and in many different respects. He got it done. That's one of the well things. So suffering through exercise, this phrase "suffer well" also appeals to me and feels heaven sent, because it helped me reach a pinnacle. Jonathan, Jesus said, stop and ask Jonathan if he has any comments, because I'm just taking this talking stick and run.
That's pretty weird, because I did. That's strange, because I just did just now. The comment was that if you can move your screen a little bit, just like that, because all we can see is the top half of your face.
Okay, sorry, I was reading that script. Yeah, okay. Maybe that's a good thing. Suffer it. Oh, I still want to see Greg's face. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I'll continue on the script. It's not too much longer. This phrase "suffer well" also appeals to me because, and set off these alarms, because, and this just came recently, Jonathan. So to tell the listeners, an interesting thing is that, like on Jesus TV, I usually just go straight to the episode. Once I understand the episode, Jesus has already scripted this thing. But this episode we did, we were going to do it, I think it was Friday, and then we were going to do it Saturday. And what we ended up is meeting, because the episode and the content and the subject matter, "suffer well," started entangling with considerations that I needed to understand, and Jonathan too, about many different things as we go forward. So God used this preparation for the episode to kind of reach deep and have us go deep. So I'd say, okay, well, I don't have energy to do the episode, and it was so important to me. And I'm going to read why here in a moment, because that fully came, Jonathan, like today. I'm like, oh, I see. This goes down deep into a very fundamental thing I've wrestled with my whole life. And so Jonathan and I, it was very productive. So that's the good thing, is like Friday and Saturday, if we were a company, which we're not, but we're with the company that we like to call the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, the three men we admire most, who have a television program, worldwide television program. And our expertise at like, how do we do TV? It seems like we're going forth, not knowing beforehand the things which we should do. But God used Friday and Saturday to explain certain things to us both. And those things, I'll just leave you. They'll become part of the program, and we could talk about them later if somebody wanted to. But this is the part that I will talk about, because it had such deep importance to me personally, tying back to my history. I have suffered my entire life because I've been blessed with who I am, but I've been cursed with who I am. So having people not understand me has been an ongoing issue from the moment I was born, I believe. It's like God gave me a different language. Imagine your kid's born speaking French, and you're like, what? It wasn't that that disjointed, but sometimes personalities can be severely different than other people, so that you have a crisis going on throughout your life. And so I've had that God gave me a heart that I wanted to reach out to people. I wanted to share these things that I have inside me. And so I developed the gift of gab. But what I learned over the years is, no, I can't do it. And when I finally got born, I had to get born again to start being trained by Jesus in a more heavy way, to understand, Greg, you got to humble yourself. Your words can't do it. Because I used to have belief in the power of words, and I still believe in the power of the word, but the power of the heart is what Jesus has been teaching me. And in so doing, he told me, this was back in 2015. He said these words: you need to let them bleed for it. And I like, okay, and I knew what he was kind of saying. He's saying, people aren't going to understand you, and quit trying to continue to make many words to have them understand you. You'll have to find other ways. And you'll have to suffer. I would use these words: suffer it to be so for now. So if they don't understand you now, maybe they'll understand you later. Maybe they have to go away for 10 years to have experiences that were like yours or like somebody else's. Then they come back, they're like, oh, I get you, Muller. I see now. Wow, I didn't see, but now I see. And like, what's that like, Greg? That's like me with you, Jesus, that there's a certain things that I couldn't understand what you were saying. So having people not understand me because of like what comes out of my mouth, and maybe the actions of my body, the circumstances, the things that I do, that I was trying to understand my own life and who I am, it became for other people not easily decipherable. And in this episode, what this episode represents, to hopefully get clear, using a bunch of words, it represents a witness for me that I hear you, God. So I'm talking right now to God. I hear what you want. You want them to bleed. Who? The audience. Just like you have me bleed. Now, use a different term, Greg, suffer. So when I say bleed, when he said bleed, he said, make them bleed for it. And he actually used a classic rock song to do it. But I heard him like, okay, make them bleed for it. I kind of got the gist of what it was. But what it did is it started easing my burden. He's like, no, they've got to want it. You can't put want in somebody's heart. Do you think you have that power? Magic word, Greg? No, I do that. I create hunger, is what Jesus was saying. And so what Jesus was telling me is, I want you to feed my sheep like I feed my sheep. And I understood, like, oh, Jesus, in a mysterious way. And he said, not just a mysterious way, a way that is fun and mysterious. and requires great levels of work and dedication and long suffering and gentleness. Well, what if they're not long suffering, God? What if they're not gentle? What if they're not kind? What if they say, well, hurry up, come on, get to the point, Greg? Then they're not going to get it. Because if I did that to God, I'm telling you what, to get close to God, I have had to suffer long. Okay. So in other words, Jesus revealed to me in preparation for this episode, the understanding of a shift that I had been building to for many decades, and that he's telling me to embrace the mystery in a childlike way of what's the mystery? Okay, I'm going to tell you this one thing because this is kind of a pause. So he revealed to me where I'm headed, and even with Jesus TV, that I'm headed to a place of high mystery where I defer to Jesus and his powers, the operations of my life. And so it's represented in a simple thing that I was able to introduce to my children when they were young, when God told me about this. And it was called Hot Cocoa Days. So imagine, if you will, that you told your kids, you say, when Jesus brings cold enough weather that it snows and it drops snow, that's when we get hot cocoa. We have to wait for the, but if you can show me there's snow out there, you can go run around and say, woohoo, because you know something's happening. We got the green light. It's cocoa time. And so we called them hot cocoa days. Well, what I had been inviting my kids to is give it up. Even our menu to Jesus, and say, Jesus, if you want us to have hot cocoa, bring the snow. And it's like, that seems a little bit like swearing kind of things, like, God, prove yourself. But that's not how God introduced it to me. He goes, who makes it snow, Greg? You do. All right. And so then he entangled that. He made a match for that. And that's where I know that I'm going, is that, and that takes patience, for my kids have to wait for that. But here's the thing. As I've gotten closer to Jesus, he's had me reflect, Greg, how have you had to work with me? Jesus, I've had to be patient, long suffering. I've had to spend hours and hours doing certain things just to eke out a little more understanding. And he goes, now, what do you think I would do with my servants? I think you'd do a similar thing, that if you were going to teach people at a low level, you just make it easy. Let's feed them like they do in Babylon. Let's make it obvious. No work is necessary. Come to the weight loss workshop. You don't have to lose weight. And of course, most people who go to weight loss workshops, they don't lose weight. And why is that? Well, because they're not really interested in losing weight. You'd have to move more and eat less. And so they go to the workshop to contemplate, and that's fun, and it's sometimes necessary. So that needs to be easy. But actually losing weight, well, oh no, hold it. That's a different program. That's one where you gotta actually, when it says 5:30 on the clock and you set that as your goal, you're up, you're moving, and it becomes a different thing, and people will tolerate that. When that's between them and their God. But Jonathan, because Jonathan hasn't heard these words, but he's heard the main instinct is Jonathan. And so I'm telling Jonathan, this is where God wants me to go. And what it does is you'll see that it's built into our programming, is that we're going to expect, God's going to expect, if you want to understand that the things that Jonathan and Greg are being led by Jesus to share, then you're going to have to do some things that you are familiar with. Because I bet everybody who's watched this, they've done hard things, whether it's raising a child, or getting an education, or getting qualified for a job. But for a television program, no, they mostly try to spoon feed you, except for on those French films where you have to try to figure out what the heck is going on. Like these Europeans just like, I walk out of the movie, I had no idea. I mean, did the guy die or not die? What was that about? Was that some poetic? It's like, oh, don't make us think, Europeans, you know, those French guys. What is that? And so hence their films aren't very popular. They're about as popular as the most correct book on earth, which we call the Book of Mormon. And so back to the script here. In other words, Jesus revealed to me in preparation for this episode the understanding of a shift that had been building for so many decades, and he had been inviting me to embrace the mystery in a childlike way of hot cocoa days, that the people, that means you listeners, would find it to be fun. Oh, we're on a mystery. Some people are like, just give us a spoiler. Not everyone, but and so not everyone's going to be able to go on this trip with us. Jesus TV. And so Jesus says, not everyone, but the ones that I am called to, and Jonathan's called to. So some people have already checked out. They're like, no, this is too long. Greg has just gone on too long. And that's what I see at church. When he makes a comment, you know, the teacher's making, you know, a 15-minute comment, but Greg, you're not the teacher. And there you are. I think I timed that thing at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Oh my goodness, dude, other people want to talk too. And I'm like, 2 minutes and 30 seconds versus 15 minutes. I've been listening to this guy for 15 minutes. Yeah, but you're not the teacher. And so people's expectations, and they're right. I don't talk at church because that very thing. I have a hard time making a point, like I said. But I like wrestling with ideas and I need to at a deeper level. And so I have charity for that. Others don't. And so Jesus has me not talk at church, but I appreciate other people's comments. And I don't get my alarm, I don't get my watch and time them and say, oh, look at somebody else did 2 minutes and 30 seconds, because they do, you know. But here's the thing, that they would have to change their argument and say, well, it's not just the length, it's the kind of comments you make. And I'm like, bingo, there's where now you're talking, because I bring a spicy testimony and I could help them and say, what your real problem is who I am. And I'd say, brother or sister, I've been struggling with that my whole life. And so what Jesus is saying, Greg, I'm going to give you the yoke of freedom on Jesus TV for this. Because the ones he wants to keep watching will embrace the mystery, this thing that we're doing. They'll embrace the mystery in a childlike way. And we will, let's see, that people, it's time to turn our attention and all of our television strategies to those people who suffer well. So I apologize for those who don't suffer well. There's people who like, I suffer well. I suffer in a marriage and I put up with so much from that, but I don't want to have to be on Jesus TV and suffer that. I just wanted to go some programming and they just get right to the point and it's moon, June, balloon and everything. And I get that. And so if your life's Jesus already has it busy, that's fine, because you're going on a deep dive here and we're going to use techniques. And I'll tell you about one of the techniques when I go back to the script. But I talked to Jonathan, I said, and Jonathan, I talked about like the logistics of, like, let's suppose we wanted to play that song, Amazing. Well, you could do that. And so right now we would, after we do this episode, I'd go and I'd edit film, and it would take hours to make sure I didn't put in too much, that I violate copyright laws. Or if I had a bunch of money, I'd get with Mr. Supa and say, hey, can we use the whole episode? What would that cost us? We don't have that. Here in the manger scene, we're going to do something unusual, but it's powerful. And that is, we're going to count on you. When we say, here's where you find us, like we did on this episode, we say, go to this location, YouTube, and search for, and then we gave you the phrase. And then we assume that you paused us during your episode. You went and listened to the whole thing. And that's a big assumption, because I think there's a lot of people, Greg, who won't do that. They'll just say, what comes next? And I'm fine with that, because there's a lot of, maybe I'd be one of them. So we are going to trust that Jesus will do his work, that we just bring our loaf and fish, and Jesus has set me free and Jonathan free to make this a simple thing that's very powerful. And both Jonathan and I, when we talked about this, we realized that it's actually, we're leapfrogging because others will do this similar thing. I knew that. I was like, oh yeah, people will do this because we've been spoon feeding people so much. Some people say, yeah, I don't mind if you make me work, if it's really important. So that's why I started out like, well, how important is suffer well? That concept, is that worth talking about? I mean, if they already covered at church, then turn off and you already know everything. And if you suffer well, you have no problem with suffering. You're just like, oh, I suffer so good. I'm like Jesus. Well, then the righteous have no need of a physician, but I don't always suffer well. I need it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to the script. Pause though. Jonathan, you have anything? I know you're making notes. I got about that much more script left, which I'll go through. Anything else?
Yeah, go ahead and finish and then I'll.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure what direction my thoughts are going. So
That's
go ahead.
Fine. Suffer well, also inviting others to suffer well. So Jesus TV is not for everybody. It's for the playful at heart, the curious at heart, the ones who will stop and go search for a few moments and maybe spend a few hours reading a poem. Yeah, I think I'll go read some of Jonathan's poems. Then I'll come back to this episode, see what they're talking about. I'm pondering it. I'm watching a movie. Yeah, they said, stop here and you could go watch this movie, because that's what we'll do. We'll say, so on this episode, we'd like you to pause here and go watch Lord of the Rings. What? Yeah, just go watch Lord of the Rings and come back. And that's the power of this technology. You can come back. You got our episode. Then you come back, say, okay, I watched it. Now we're going to, from here, discuss it. And assuming that you know. And if you don't, that's fine. Go with whatever Jesus, but we're not going to spoon feed you. We're just going to say that the food's over there. Now we're going to assume you're full of that. Let's share something else. I'm pondering it, assigned to, okay. And then you come back to our episode and you finish it off. It's like additional readings that used to be assigned to me. Like I've been going to school for so long, they would give you additional assignments. You're like, no way, man, I'm having a hard time doing everything that's in this this class, let alone added reading. Are you kidding me? But the truth of it is God has been pouring things down upon my soul like that for all my life. And I just got a couple more things to say, but I'm going to pause to say that. I went to Texas A&M to get a PhD. And I'd have to read books like this. I couldn't read them. I was raising children, so I'd have to read excerpts and just pretend like I read them. And it's just like, I hate that. Now, I would have students who actually did. Maybe they're from China. They don't have a family because they think that's crazy. You cannot raise a family while you're going to graduate school, obviously. And Jesus saw me through it. But then they would add, oh, you ought to do this and you ought to do that. Well, what I would do that's kind of crazy, but it's not, because it was Jesus. He would say, Greg, go to Ramadan, so like a Muslim celebration. So there I am spending hours with Muslims when I should be earning sweaty wads of cash or studying. But because Jesus said, go to Ramadan, and also they had free ethnic food and they invited us to Ramadan. So my wife and I are there praying. My wife's like, oh, this is a weird date. They're separating my husband and I from one another. So she's with the women, I'm with the men. We're bowing down, praying in a different way. But he was giving me additional assignments. So the teachers say, here's the assignments. And Jesus goes, no, I'm going to give you something you're not even going to get a grade for at graduate school. So my graduate school took more than twice as long as my friend, because it involved many more things. And I suffered it. And God would say, you suffered it well. Not always, but yes. And I did suffer, because what happens when you're not, when you're in a course, there's expectations, and then God has you do something else. Well, I'll tell you what, you suffer, because when you go to that class, they go, okay, I'm going to assume you guys did the reading. Oh, okay, go ahead and assume that. 3 hours of there, you're just like, oh, am I going to get caught? You know, are they going to know I didn't do the readings? And I'm sure my professors were smart enough to know he probably just skimmed it, and they are right. So they had grace, but it was suffering. Had I read all the readings, I'd go in there feeling like a powerhouse. Oh yeah, I read them twice, and I understand sociology because of that. But I couldn't say, I understand Jesus more. Well, that's not the assignment, brother. And so let's see. I'll go back to the final thing. But the truth is, God has been pouring down upon my soul for all my life additional readings, or the equivalents of additional readings. So many additional readings. And then to come back to him later, and sometimes much later, for the great reveal. So here's the thing. Jesus would, in a mysterious way, I'd be like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I could go for a year. And then finally it's like, oh. And so we do not live in a society where people are going to suffer that long. You're going to give me an idea. I'm going to suffer all this time, and you're going to give me an idea. And I'll do it. And I've done it for Jesus. And so when I got to this poem, that's part of what I got. It was like finally the reveal. So that's called, like in a movie, who done it? Who done it? What happened? And the reveal came. And that's what this gave birth to this episode that we're doing and trying to do. Because for me, it was a big reveal. Is a reveal of a very foundational concept that will guide both Jonathan and I in discussing with other people. We don't have to be the experts. They're the content experts, so we can bring in the way we just talked about, hey, go read about Steve Tyler. Now, let's talk about that. And so we will investigate this, but in a way that may be more mysterious than you're used to. In other words, Jesus often hides the spoiler from me until a special time. And I've played along with this. I've suffered it. It's been frustrating sometimes, but I now know it's his way. And now he's having me mimic his very way on Jesus TV. There's you go. And it's kind of a repetition what I said, but I'm like, I'm learning to be like Jesus. I think there's a primary song. I'm learning to be like Jesus in every way. Even the way where you hold the spoiler, you don't tell your audience things. You don't start out with the end in mind. Jesus, it would be nice if you would do what Steve Covey says. Start with the end in mind. Why are you having me do these things? And Jesus like, no, you got to go for another year or two, and then I'll tell you why. Well, weren't you trained in Babylon, U.S. Antichrist Babylon? No, he was trained in a better place. And so there we go, Jonathan. I think we've got to the end of it. that was kind of like my, what did they call that? Where you go, warning, or here's what you're going
disclaimer.
Into. Disclaimer. Yeah, the disclaimer is like, yeah, we know we're doing this, but God's been doing this to us. How long has he been doing that to you, Jonathan? Those poems that come to you, how much preamble of experiences is there to that?
Well, no, it's funny. It's with the other episodes we've done, I felt like I had kind of direction. So you may have to, I don't know if I'm going to exactly answer your question, but I guess the answer to your question is that I have found that that's the case. It's like something often unfolds very slowly and in pieces. And I guess that is something I can say right there as far as where perhaps the world is going. Of course, perhaps we all think that the world will unfold the way our personal lives have. But I've wondered, if God were to do with the world what he's done in my life, if it would be interesting to see what that would look like. And what I almost wonder is, it's like, the way we've tried to learn it in the past is through reading, and through instruction. But it's like he wants it almost written he wants truth that's written in our flesh, that it's really, really deep, like it's almost primal. And in order for that to happen, like, if you think about evolution, the idea of evolution, even if you don't espouse that as what you believe, which I think there's good reason to question it. But if you look at the idea is that the idea that animals, creatures do certain things in certain ways because of generation after generation of it being painful to do it one way and less painful to do it a different way, or because only that survival was dependent upon doing it a certain way, and you learn, like, through that survival, that it's like why do all the birds fly a certain direction at a certain time of year? Well, because they have a better chance of living, is the evolutionary idea, and you can take a step back from that, and say, well, I'm not making any case for evolution. I'm just saying that it's like I kind of wonder if what God wants is, of what the divine is bringing about, is something which is going to be written upon our flesh. And so the only way to do that is through pain. Okay, so it's like the only way to really learn something is through experience. And so it's like, I kind of have wondered at times if it's like, I've had the impression at times that it felt like, and given this is for anybody who thinks that God actually interacts with them. If you think that it's all in the Bible, or it's all in this certain place, and that no revelation is needed, and that like God doesn't really talk to people anymore, it's like you may not like our program, but it's like, but the truth is for those of us who believe that there's a whispering of the still small voice which guides us. I think about my own life, and I think about how it's like I've been moving along, and there have been times where I really felt drawn to move in a certain direction, and it felt divinely almost appointed or orchestrated. And as I would, and as best I can describe it, it almost felt like I would feel kind of drawn in a certain direction, and you have that moment where you're turning upward, like, is this the right thing? Is this the right thing? And I think that people who are not even religious can get this idea that it's almost like, it's like at critical times in your life, there's a turning almost upward to like a higher intelligence, like is this the right thing? Almost like, even if you don't even believe in God, it's like you're appealing to your brighter self.
Yeah, right.
To that subconscious, or the collective conscious, like is this the right thing? And in those moments, I've had moments of where, like, I'm kind of turning to what I understand God to be, and saying, is this right? And what I've almost felt is like, give it a try. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good to me. And in many instances, like, I would move ahead into that, and man, bam, it's like all of the repercussions of that choice would come barreling down on me like a mountain. And when that would happen, it was like, whoa, and it's like, well, like, God told me to do this. I felt to do this, I felt good about doing this. Why did I feel good about why did I feel the still small telling you to do this? And and it was like over time, it's like I would learn things from it. It's like I'd be like, oh, well, it's like, that voice would kind of whisper to me like, well, what did you see in this? What did you experience? And I would look back and I'd realize, well, like I saw this and I saw this, I saw the other thing. And at a certain point, like sometimes I would come to a point, I remember one point where it was like, I was having one of those moments. I pray in my journal or I go through notebook after notebook. I've gone through hundreds and hundreds of notebooks, and I'm going through my notebook and I'm saying to myself, it's like, I am so tired of being a nobody. I can't be a nobody anymore. Why can't I be somebody? And then in the next paragraph, I'm saying it's like, it's just like this dismal feeling comes over me, like, I just want to disappear. I want to be nobody. I want to be nobody. And then I'm like, wait a second, this is kind of schizophrenic here. It's like, what do you want? And I could kind of hear the still small voice, like, what do you want? Do you want to be somebody or do you want to be nobody? And I remember I had a clear moment of clarity, and it was a clear moment. This was fascinating to me. It was a clear moment of just salient clarity. And it was a salient clarity, not about what God wanted, but about what I wanted. And I had this moment of realization, and it was like, what do I want? Somebody? Do I want to be somebody or do I want to be nobody? And it just came clear as anything. I want to be nobody. Like I just had a knowing, like that my desire, my deep desire was that I wanted to disappear. And the moment I realized that, I heard the still small voice say, that's what I've been waiting for.
Yeah. Except
and it was like this moment of like, so wait a second, I've been going through being beaten down like nothing and trying to be somebody so that I could be something for the people who I love. Like I've been beating myself, to try to force myself, to be somebody. And all the while you were like, good, keep at it. Keep hitting that brick wall. Come on, keep at it. And I was doing it, and it was like, and all the time you were just waiting and hoping that I would come to the point where I realized that I didn't want to be somebody anymore, that I wanted to be nobody. Is that was what you were waiting for? Like, wasn't there an easier way? Well, no, seriously, but I realize now, like it's written in my flesh.
Yes.
It's like deep down, I want to be nobody.
Yeah, and
it's like it's a part of me now. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, you get that in your poem. So the poem that we recommended to you, that's episode 5. Tell me the title of that. Do you remember it offhand?
When loss is gain.
When loss is gain was. Yeah. So that carries the essence of what Jonathan's talking about. That's why I'm recommending it. So www.getmorejesus.com, go down to Jesus TV. Poetry and Prophecy is the television program, or go to www.thetracklesspath.com. That poem is there, and it gets at the essence of what you're talking about. And it's an interesting, I don't know what they call that, dialectic oppositional force. But Jonathan and I know that oppositional force is the wholeness of God. It's both things simultaneous, and they seem incompatible. You want to be somebody, then be a nobody. Jesus phrased it, except you lose your life, you should not find it. So then
yes.
What Jonathan is saying is Jesus encouraging him, go get a life, until Jonathan says, I'm going to give up my life. Exactly what I wanted you to do.
It's so paradoxical.
And here's the thing, like what you phrased, see, it's going on with every one of us. This thing that Jonathan just put into words, it doesn't end. It gets reborn and reborn, that same thing, because Jonathan and the flesh wants to eat, wants to be somebody, doesn't want to die. And so it's a process of tensions like that. And that's what I like in the Suffer Well, is because it resolves that by, let's say them both, suffer well. And then the rest of the title of this episode is called Healed by His Stripes. We are healed by His stripes. Suffer well. And who are we pointing to? Jesus. And so is he going to hit us? Is that how we're going to get well? Well, only if you thought that what the still small voice was telling Jonathan to do was hitting him, then you would typify that. But yeah, some of the things that we're given to do are very rough. And so Jonathan's going to, later in another episode, he's going to introduce Jordan Peterson's daughter. And so Jonathan will kind of take the lead on that episode. But Jordan Peterson's daughter wanted to get a life. Okay, she grew up in this home where she had powerhouses of parents, and she wanted a life. Well, there came a point where these parents needed her, and the still small voice said, "Stay with them." And so Jonathan will explain that in another episode. But she had to give up her life in order to find a new one and blossom, and actually give her parents new life as well, simultaneous. Her father started seeing things he hadn't seen, but it required sacrifice. So that's an important key, is when we talk about suffer well, here's a language that that's a similar and parallel language. It's called sacrifice, suffer and sacrifice. And sacrifice is always giving up a lesser thing for something greater. When you're in God's land, if you're in the devil land, it means giving up something just so you can get something worse, because the devil is miserable and he wants everybody to be miserable like unto himself. God is joyful and wants everybody to be joyful, but God has to use some tensions to get us there. I don't want to come through the birth canal. I just want to stay in my mommy's womb. And everybody has this pleasant experience. Most everybody was in their womb and it was all nice. It was warm in there. Why in the heck would you want to come out? Because it's a risky proposition. Now, some people come out and it's noodle salads their whole life. You know, they were born into wealth or kindness or whatever. Other people, but we all had an experience. We could call it like a pre-heavenly experience, where we were in the womb and we were in a safe place. And so we long for the womb again. And so when Jesus talked about being born again, Nicodemus says, should I go back to my mom's womb? That's kind of hard. I can't. She's too old. And Jesus said, no. But that longing and that action is towards going into a safe place like the womb. But it's a different realm that we're talking about. And how you get there, well, see, that's why I got excited, because Jesus is giving instructions, directions how to get there. And when I heard suffer well, I'm like, whoa, that's like Google Maps. So that's like, but it doesn't give all the instructions, but it's like, this is where you need to bring your attention, Greg, if you want to spend more time in that place of peace. You need to learn how to suffer well. And which, I'm going to come back to that theme, Jonathan, because Jesus, I made a note. So I love where you went with that. But Friday, I think it was, maybe, yes, Friday, Jesus said, tell them about Amazon so that they know the society they live in and what we're trained to. Okay, we are trained in our society to not suffer well. She's like, you shouldn't have to suffer well. Okay, everything should be immediate. That's immediate gratification. Hunger is not, and Jonathan and I agree. Oh, hunger feels so good. I just love being hungry. Yeah. Or, discomfort, I love being too hot. No, we're not in this television program going to be trying to get people to self-flagellate or anything like that. We're going to try to help them see that the things that God is doing in their life that involves suffering have purpose and meaning. And but often you're going to hear us talk about trends and tendencies in the society, because we've been trained away from this suffering well. we've been learning how to suffer, sometimes not at all. We don't have to put up with that. And so we go in our silo. But Amazon, they got a what do they call that? A patent on one click. So if you've used Amazon to buy stuff, and many people have, you can sometimes, when you set it up with them, you say, I want that pair of socks. One click, it's coming. Boom. I mean, there might be 2 clicks. They're kind of funny that way. 1 click. Well, now I got to say okay to that. But it's the concept, and they actually patented it. I don't know if they get money from these other places that do the same thing. But what they found, and why they did this, is they found that like 70% of the things that end up in the shopping cart are not purchased if the person has to go beyond one or 2 clicks. It just sits there and then they don't buy them. It's like, I want those socks, and I want that CD by that artist. And it's like, oh, okay. And then they get distracted, like, okay, now what do I have to do? By the 3rd or 4th click, they're like, maybe I don't need those. What? Yeah. Oh, money's tight, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just leave them in the shopping cart, and it never gets done. So what Amazon had to do is make it more convenient. And so in our society, we are trained in every respect, but Amazon's a great example of, and we're self-reinforcing. We like that. And I like that. Man, I don't like to have to do a lot of clicking. You see, I want that. Just give it to me. And I see, wow, there's a power in that. And that's what your whole society online and is designed to, hey, don't think about it. Let's get you in a car. Okay. I don't know that you can afford it. I'm looking at your credit score. You can afford it. Well, let's talk about my job. Let's not. I'm a car salesman, and I'm not here to advise you financially. I don't think I could even do that. But here's what I'll assure you. You can always bring the car back, blah, 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 whatever. They just want the sale, and they're kind, and they're mad if they have to. But when you walk out, it's ding, 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 sucker. No, that's probably the nasty ones. But okay, that's all I wanted to say about that. Is the tendency in our society towards convenience? And you say, well, why wouldn't anybody want convenience? I don't know. If you want to learn how to suffer well, maybe you could park your car like a half mile away from your work. Why would anybody do that? I don't know. Ask the people who are trying to lose weight or who are older and they need to walk more. And they realize driving their car, they've had a sedentary life. Yeah, but I don't want to do that. Well, then don't do it. No, I just like to pull right up there, and so that convenient lifestyle, it has consequences, and just as suffering does. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Just, what occurred to me was that I wonder if, when we've thought about encountering God, encountering the divine, I wonder if we've had a rosy picture.
Oh yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's Jesus, it's like the Lamb of God, not the Lion of God, not the scary lion, the Lamb of God. Yep.
Well, and here's what I kind of wonder is, it's like, yeah, it's two parts. So love is not, and the love of God, the love of the divine, is not it's not one-sided.
Yeah.
It desires what is best for our souls, and so it's good to be raised, as a little child singing Jesus songs, and learning about his love and his kindness. But I think it's a surprise for many people when they really get serious about, and I hate to use words because it not everybody uses the same vocabulary. In my world, it was serious about like repentance. It's like there's sometimes a confusion, I think, between like testimony and repentance. It's like you can have kind of a knowing that something's true, but still be the same person you were before you found out that it was true. So there comes a point in your life where you, and I think people outside of maybe the framework that you and I have been raised in might, I don't know what they would call it, but you know, going back to the song that you played today, by Steven Tyler and the other fellow, Suba. One thing that people who've been through recovery know is that it is sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. It's like on the day you decide you're not going to do cocaine anymore, you know, it's like the cocaine monster doesn't lay down and go to sleep. Yeah. You know, it's like now the battle's on. And on the day that you decide that you want to follow the still small voice, and on the day that when you decide that you want it to take over your life, it's like you may not know what that means. You may have no idea what it will take to get from who you are to who you should be. And you know, there's a lot of thoughts in my mind swimming around this. I've listened to the music. I watched that video. I've thought about and I've thought about this concept of suffering, and it's like I wonder, you know, it's like in the moment that we decide that we want the truth, it's like, number one, we've been living in a society of lies. So there's not, so, well, and another thing too is it's like the beginning usually starts with realizing that there's one aspect of your life that needs change. And it's like, okay, I just can't keep doing cocaine, so I'm going to go to rehab. Okay. But it's like C.S. Lewis talks about this. It's like that's like one part. And in a sense, when you want the one part, what you kind of want, this will sound terrible, and I don't mean that desire isn't good, but that there's kind of a dark underbelly too. And that is that it's like, I want God in my life. And it's like, I'm opening the door, I'm opening the crack just enough. You know, it's like, okay, God, I'm letting you in to fix cocaine.
Yes, that's right.
Now, the rest of the house, like, you know, and we don't say this. Yeah. And oftentimes what happens is you open the door and you don't know what's going to be changed. But it's like, I know for me, there came a point in my life, and I don't mind talking about this, but when I was a young man, I dealt with some of the things that many young men do. I fell into a pornography addiction when I was like 11. And I you can say I entered into what would be called like a recovery when I was 15. And it kind of came to a point where I was just praying God would kill me, you know. And then my life totally changed. It was a one sin repentance. You get me? Yeah. It was like, but it totally revolutionized my life. It was like I became highly interested in music, in choral music in particular. My whole life changed. It was like, yeah. I went from being immoral to being moral, and it was like it changed everything. And it didn't mean that I didn't still have a temptation here and there, but somehow I had the ability to resist the temptation. Well, years pass. I go into a stressful period with my business when I'm in my 30s, and I start, like, so you and I were raised Mormons, and so it's like, you know, no smoking, drinking, drugs, you know, coffee, tea, tobacco. So it's like, Mormons have to do something to deal with the stress, and for me, it was chocolate chip cookies.
Right.
And I was raised around food, and it was like food was around all the good experiences of my childhood. So I quickly, it's embarrassing in a way, but it's just part of my life. It was like, but I became extremely compulsive in the way that I ate, and people wouldn't guess it because I've always been thin, but it was unruly. I remember eating the cookie dough in the middle of the night and really feeling like any second I was about to start hurling because I had eaten so much, and I still could not stop eating this big bowl full of cookie dough that my wife had put together, and I'm eating it and I can't stop. So I attended a 12-step meeting, and I remember started going through the steps. We get to step number 4 where it says make a fearless moral inventory, and it was like, oh, so I'm supposed to look at everything in my life, and like something clicked. It was like, wait a second. So unless I really become totally serious about absolute complete repentance, and that's not, I'm not even talking about the same thing for everybody. It's like you wouldn't have called it that in the road you're going down, and other people wouldn't, the other people who have experienced this change. But it's almost like you get to a point where you realize my entire life is a fiction.
Right.
It's a harmful fiction.
Yes.
I need a complete renewal of every single aspect of every single part of myself. And so now what you end up discovering when you decide that that's what you want is it's almost like now you've signed up. Now you've signed up for pain.
Yeah.
Okay, because what you've done all these years is you've avoided pain through all of these, it's like we've even inherited some of them. It's like,
yes,
it's like our entire society is, and it's not that there's not supposed to be comfort. One of the things you end up learning is, as you are taking down this journey, is that you have to take care of the creature. It's like the part of us that's flesh. It's like if you push it too hard, if you try to be Mr. Perfect, if you try to be, but all of that has to be relearned, to take care of yourself, to make sure that you get what you need, but also don't become addictive or become, and that you do all these things. It's like you have to go back to being a little child, and 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 people do it different ways. Some people they'll throw themselves upon a certain group, like a 12-step group, but even at the core of that is the idea of a higher power. And it's like, and ultimately, and I think this is the last part of my comment, and then I'll pass it back, but ultimately, I think what we discovered is that there is a letting go of who we are to something which is bigger than us, which runs this whole show. And once we sign up for that, if we really desire a complete overhaul, well then, and what I feel like, last thing is just, I feel like that's coming for the world. I don't know if it's in 2 years, 5, and of course it'll come sooner for some and later for others, but it feels like it's like the time's over.
Yeah.
It's like it's past the time for the world and for all of our, it's like it's time now. It's like you talked about the lamb and the lion. It's like now it's time for the lion, and and that's what we want.
Yes.
We want the lion to come into our lives and begin to tear, not tear in the way of reckless, but tear down the house and start to rebuild, and so
give me a better version of who I can be. Because that's what we want. It's just I don't like who I am right now. Can you take me to a place where I like who I am? And sometimes that actually is just Jesus saying, I like who you are. And then
Yeah,
that's revolutionary. Like, oh, so you're okay with this?
you're absolutely right. That's a big part. That's a surprising part of my journey has been. I think I was so religious. I like in the song. There's this one point where he says,
Oh
"I
yeah,
couldn't handle all that righteous talk."
right.
You know, it's like, and that's the fault of the righteous, quote unquote. It's the fault of the 99. I listened to this interview today. Of two very religious people, and Ben Shapiro interviewing John MacArthur. I hate to mention names, but it's like, but I have to admit, I struggle a little bit with one of those fellows because he's just so kind of like, and sometimes the religious can be so, oh man, I don't know how to put it, but it's like that's the way I was with myself for a lot of years. And I see that my rigidness caused me to fall into many errors. And it's like, and we end up discovering that what God wanted for us was not, that his idea of perfection wasn't what we thought it was. It was like it's something different that only God can navigate with us. And so that's why I let go when I see other people, and I think, I don't know what they are supposed to look like today.
Yes.
Does that make sense? And a step forward for them, maybe a step back for me, or a step back for me might be a step forward for them. God only knows. And so I trust people's path. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to those lyrics again, and we'll just talk about those. Then we'll just see where it goes. Maybe wrap up. I kept the right ones out and let the wrong ones in. So I love that. At first, when I was like, I was doing something with my tongue and my head at the same time. I kept the right ones out and let the wrong ones in. But it speaks a truth that's so fundamental to what we're talking about here. It's like a confession that, like Steve Tyler and most addicts would understand. It's not just that I let cocaine, but the people who brought me my cocaine, these were friends. They introduced me. Hey, this will be fun. And they weren't thinking about his health. Maybe they're just thinking about, let's have a good time. We got some girls coming. Their thoughts were baser than like, let's make sure you have a good, healthy life, Steve Tyler. Let's make sure that your marriage stays healthy. But so he had a relapse, as I explained on your episode 5. Just recently, his band is headed for Vegas for a stint there. And so right now, I think he's still in rehab because he got addicted to the pain meds. He's 72 years old. That's kind of an old guy. And he has addictive personality and had to take the pain meds just to kind of get along. But he enrolled himself in there. And his bandmates, I'm sure they were glad because they now care about and they understand. So as you grow in maturity, you realize, oh, we did some stupid stuff. Now there's still some old people that are just like, oh, that was so cool. Rather than despising that lifestyle, they're still loving it. I'll leave that between them and God. And it really is there. It's fine. Do whatever it is, because we were sent to earth to partake of fruit and go through the consequences of those things. God will forbid fruit that's not good for you because he's a good God, but he'll let you do it because he'll just leave it right there. Well, there's some cocaine. You got money. Look, you could do that again. And then that individual has to exercise that for themselves. Jesus, Savior of mercy. Now, they don't say that in Aerosmith. Where's this coming from, Greg? Right. So if you looked up the amazing Aerosmith lyrics, so Jesus speaks to me through classic rock songs, as well as other music, country, traditional hymns. But this is how Jesus sings this song, I believe, because I heard him. Jesus, Savior of mercy, you saw me through all my sins. So he said, I had an angel of mercy to see me through all my sins. And when I very first heard this song, I was kind of objecting, like, oh, that's what your cocaine was or whatever. And I was objecting, but I'm like, no, that's true, that Jesus had that as well. He had angels minister during his suffering. So that's how I chose to interpret it, that, and that God is with us in our suffering, that he will help us, and he's always there to help us suffer better. But we have to ask, seek and you shall find. Didn't say just laze around and wait for me. No, seek and you shall find. Knock. Do I have to knock? Knock and it should be opened. You don't have to knock. Just stay there and suffer. That's not suffering well. Well is where you keep knocking. Jesus, Jesus. And then you trust him, because when he opens up and says, do this, I don't want to do that. I want my friends, but I don't want my cocaine habit. And like you said, sometimes they're interrelated. I just want a good marriage. I want all the girls on Friday night after my concerts, but it's interrelated. As human beings, we start interrelating all these things. And so it's a big tangle. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just going to interject that it's often the addiction, the suffering of addiction comes from the desire to avoid pain. Yeah. So that's, and then of course it compounds, and I'm not speaking anything new. We're not saying anything that people don't understand. It's in the video, it's kind of depicting a young man who's he's got this. It must have been when they just came out, those things. The now
VR, VR glasses, yeah.
Yeah, so you can like it's like virtual reality, VR, virtual reality, and he's having all these sexual escapades with women in his, in his bedroom. They scan the room, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but they scan the room, and it's his clothes are all over the place, and he's obviously just like vegging away, and when it's all over, at the end of it, he prints out a picture of the girl, and he takes a clothespin and he puts it up, and there's like 10 other girls, and of course they're all virtual, it's like, and given they don't actually show it, but it's obvious what they're talking about. It's like, and it would definitely be considered, I considered it inappropriate, but
sure,
deeply inappropriate. But the point being is it was like it's like, why do you suffer in your youth? Why do you suffer, doing your very best to abstain from, say, pornography or illicit sex or whatever? Well, part of the reason why a young man does that is because when you become 25 or however old you are, you want to engage and begin a long-term intimate relationship with a woman, and the foundation of that is laid in all those years of pain.
Yeah. Promiscuity doesn't just immediately evaporate because I got a ring on my finger. Now it could miraculously, because God could give that power to them. But if you live a promiscuous life, we live in a society that has the next stage, which is, and it's celebrated and also disdained. Why do you have to stay with one spouse? So there's now secret combinations where, for instance, Will Smith and Jada Smith, they have an open relationship. And so and people you could come to the conclusion that oh, that's a good idea, Greg. I hadn't thought of that. So yeah, I had different partners, and really it was just about kind of one night stands. Why can't I continue that? As long as I feed my kids and I show up with bread and milk, and then I continue to do this. And a person who's gone down that road and is in sexual addiction recovery could tell you why. Because you are living a lie. And that's so I like that Steven Tyler's does this. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say one more thing, then I'll let you finish that. But and and for those who are down that path a ways, it's like, and now they're realizing it's like, oh wow, I should have, chosen a different path earlier in my life. It's like now, well, now, yeah, there's going to be some pain. It's like and it may have costs. You may have costs. You may pay costs that you're paying for your parents. I mean, it's like there may be things that you do that it's like that you don't even know are wrong yet, that are seriously jeopardizing your entire family and fabric of your reality. And it's like, and the point is that it's like, and I kind of wonder if the point of what we're going to talk about more and more as we do these is that suffering is okay.
Yeah.
It's like, and for the time we're going to go into, it's like I promise you, with things that are happening in our culture, you know what it's going to bring? A lot of suffering. It's like it is going to bring suffering like you have not seen maybe in a history of the earth. It's like there is going to be, well, it's nothing new on the earth, but the point being is it's like, so, but at that point, it's like that's part of what we came here for. And part of, and I'll say this last thing, part of the gift of having sinned, made mistakes, and then turning our lives to that higher power as we know him, part of that is, part of the beauty of it is that, there's two versions of why we did this. Either we did it because we are these horrible, wretched people. Well, that is actually kind of scripturally a sound reason. Like, yeah, that's probably true. But once we begin to get into that road with that divine being who begins to lead us out of our sins, one of the things that we begin to realize is that there was a deeper something.
Yes.
And that is that it's like we came down to this earth because we desired to learn compassion. And so why did we choose to come down to this messed up family that ended up, it was, there was like a snowball's chance in hell I wouldn't end up an addict out of coming out of that. It's like, why did we do that? Well, because it's the only way to know what it's like to be a person who's experienced this. And once you know that, well, then it's like you're standing with God in a sense, and you're looking out on the world. And because that's the way God is it's like, why does it say that Christ came down and became sin for us? It's like, well, it's because it opens up the capacities for compassion. That's one of the last thing I'll say. Sorry, I'm interjecting too much.
You're fine.
But in the 12 steps, Mr. Supa was talking about that. It's the 12 steps and getting into recovery. It's like one of the key steps is step number 12, and that is, like, they have found that it is key to stay in remission. You have to help other people.
Yes.
It's just like, it's like an unwritten law. Like, you have to turn around and help other people, or else you will fall back into your previous sins. And it's like clockwork. It just happens.
Yes.
And so it's one of the mysteries of suffering. We come down here to suffer. We come down here to partake of forbidden fruit. Not that he ordains it, but we come down here to experience this so that we can taste the bitter, so that we can learn to prize the sweet. And then once we prize the sweet, we can turn back around with compassion and reach down and help people who are suffering. So go back.
Well, and I like that. And I'm glad that you referenced back to Richie Supa, S-U-P-A, on the story of recovery unplugged. So you can go to YouTube and search for that phrase, Richie Supa on the story of recovery unplugged. And why I bring that back is because just what you were saying is that he now provides those services, and you'll see that he talks about music as being a therapy. And I, before this episode, I forwarded this link so that Jonathan could watch this, and he did. But I also said money and poetry are catalysts. So I liked how they talked about music as a catalyst, and there's different kinds of catalysts. that can help people move towards wellness and healing. And so we'll touch on a lot of those throughout all these episodes, hundreds of them, I'm sure, because I'm committed to going down this road. Like, this is a good road to go, because there's so much suffering. And well, how much, Greg? Well, REM has a song too. Everybody hurts. When your day is long and the night is yours alone. When you're sure you've had enough of this life, well, hang on. Don't let yourself go, because everybody cries, everybody hurts. Sometimes everything is wrong. Now, sometimes, yeah, that's the next verse. Sometimes everything is wrong. Now it's time to sing along. When your day is night alone, hold on, hold on. If you feel like letting go, hold on. If you think you've had too much of this life, well, hang on, because everybody hurts. Take comfort in your friends. Everybody hurts. Don't throw your hand. Oh no, don't throw your hand. If you feel like you're alone, no, 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 you are not alone. If you're on your own in this life, the days and nights are long. When you think you've had too much of this life, hang on. Well, everybody hurts sometimes. Everybody cries. Everybody hurts sometimes. And everybody hurts sometimes. So hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Everybody hurts. So that's what that song just kept coming. I'm like, okay, Jesus, I hear it. Maybe somebody needed to hear that. REM. But it actually wasn't my song for comforting myself, but I related to that. So maybe that's why we're just going to give ourselves to the mystery that God is. So I'm going to go back to the song by Aerosmith, because that one, yeah, Jesus wanted that for me. There were times in my life when I was going insane, trying to walk through the pain. And so that's good phrasing. When I lost my grip, and this is the event, alcoholics would call it the event of hitting rock bottom. When I lost my grip and I hit the floor, yeah, I thought I could leave, but I couldn't get out of the door. I was so sick and tired of living a lie. I was wishing that I would die. And so it comes back to what you're talking about, your wish. I want to be nobody. Good pick. Ring a ding.
Oh, finally, the heavens are rejoicing. Like, finally, we've been waiting so long.
Yeah, and that's I'm sure that's what these artists, these music artists that have all this praise, and they have to come to the same place. You just like, I have to give it all up, and then it's redeemed. It's brought back to you. No, you'll still do music, but you're going to have to do it in a new way. And so sometimes it means they have to leave the band because their addictions are intertwined with that band, or the lifestyle. They just they're not strong enough to go to these gigs where everybody's offered them, or they're doing drugs, and it's just part of the scene, and they're not strong enough. Whereas others are, like somebody like Axl Rose. He's a teetotaler. He won't drink beer because maybe he has had experience. I don't know what his story is, but basically he doesn't have problem with alcohol because he's not going to go down that route. I can't remember if that's all true, but I do know there's certain artists who, no, they can go because they've steeled themselves. They died to that. I am not going down that road. And they'll actually fire people if there's people offering them stuff. They'll get aggressive about mounting that, and they'll care about others in that realm. So then this one, then Jesus saved me, would die. That's not the lyrics. I'm trying to remember the original lyric. Living a lie. I was wishing that I would die. Oh, it's amazing. So this song's called Amazing. But I needed to hear, Jesus says, you need to hear, then Jesus saved me, which he did, which is amazing, of course. Then Jesus saved me. In the blink of an eye, I finally saw God's light. And then Jesus saved me. When that moment arrived, I knew I'd be all right. Yeah, Jesus saved me. And I'm saying a prayer for the desperate hearts tonight. And so once again, you're suffering, that you come through and then you turn to others. And that is the pattern. So I like you brought that pattern, because that's what that spirit will have you do. It's a spirit that says, once you are saved, once you're converted, help the next person below you. And that's suffering well. So I like that theme will keep coming back, Jonathan, throughout our episodes. is the importance of service to others, and suffering that way. In fact, I will add here, if you have anything, you stop me because you raise your hand. But I have two daughters that aren't married, and Jesus said, tell them that they need to. I sat them down. I said, Jesus told me this because I try to keep my fatherly advice on, hey, if you guys want to watch this, watch Jesus TV, because I'm a big reservoir, as you can imagine, just of knowledge. I just want to spew it forth to my kids and save them. But that's not right. I need to let Jesus save them. So they would say, no, he talks a lot. And so they get a lot, but they have no idea the vast volumes that I would like to dispense to them. But this was a case, and it was 2 days ago. Jesus said, go tell them this. And I said, you are living at a very hopeful time for marriage partners. The world is changing. And what you need to do is line up and go find organizations or whatever to serve, because you will find people who are suffering like they're swinging a hammer for Habitat for Humanity. All right. And you might want to find those who are doing projects within our own religious faith, if you want to marry within that faith. You might want to find somebody who's your same age, because if they're 13 years old, that may not be the ones you want to get with. Oh, a bunch of 13-year-olds. Well, this is not the place. So do this strategically. But I said, it's coming to the earth where people will gather, and they'll gather kind of by tribes. And so you'll have Christian tribes that are going to gather, caring for one another. And in our religious faith, we already know some of the things that will happen, that we will bear one another's burdens. This will be a general trend, is that, and there'll be no poor among us. So I think there's going to be distribution of funds. That has not yet happened, but it will happen, I think, within my lifetime and within my girls' lifetime. And I think it's going to happen soon. Is why Jesus would tell me, because they had an experience going online with this online dating thing. And I thought, that's so cool. Wish I'd had that. But then Jesus has me minister to this friend who's now in his 40s. And he's been telling me that's just a wasteland, teenage wasteland, and a wasteland for 40-year-olds generally. Now, it works for some people, but I understood what he was saying, because there's just all these needy people, but there's fears, and that gets sorted out. If you go to Habitat for Humanity and you find somebody there that has been working for 2 years, and earnestly, you'll be able to see the earnestness. And then all the things you would do on a first date, you can do while you're working. So my girls are familiar with that. I said, how we worked with family here in our ranch. You talk to people, you have lunch, and it's not necessary to have a date. So I imagine the pioneers, it's like, we don't date, we just hang around each other as we go across the plains, as we build these fences. So I celebrated that's coming, but it's tied to suffering well, because for those who can abide that, they can, and basically I was advising my daughters, be giving of yourselves, and then in an environment where others are, and you will find people who have progressed on the spiritual ladder that are close to where you're at. Others may need to do something else, where they're just they're not that high on the spiritual ladder. So they're just trying to find somebody who's a deep Christian of their faith. And is that a big ask? Well, as they start going past the age, they could totally not get married, not have kids. And that's the normal thing, actually, within our faith. If you get up 30, 40, it's like, okay, game over. Statistically and so forth. I'm a sociologist and actually had a class on this, but I told them a new thing is coming, because these men will be looking for, the good-hearted men, they're looking for the right thing. They're looking considerably more like God looks upon the heart, because they understand these principles. Anyhow, I wanted to share that with regards to how suffering well then becomes a filter, that you go find people who are suffering well, and you're going to find people who are quality people. Yes.
So a couple times while you were talking just now, it started cutting out.
I saw that.
Okay, we're okay. I just want to make sure it's all right. It's good.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
it's like I thought my phone had maybe gone dead, but it's okay. It's still going because I connect using my cellular. So okay, we're fine then. It's working now.
Okay. I lost my way to in Ramblin' Temptations. That's what Jesus changed the lyrics to. But this is back to the Aerosmith that he kept. And how high can you fly with broken wings? Life's a journey, not a destination. And I just can't tell what tomorrow brings. You have to learn to crawl before you learn to walk. So these are phrases that would be common phrases in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, like they went to. But then this is the one that both Jonathan and I really resonated. But I just couldn't listen to all that righteous talk. I was out on the street just trying to survive, scratching to stay alive. So you already commented on that. Any other comment you want to make about that? I just couldn't stand any more righteous talk.
Not quite on that. There was something else you said that spurned a thought. What was the part just before that?
I was talking about my daughters, the gathering of those who were suffering well.
Oh, I think I remember. He said, and it related to what he said about life's a journey, not a destination. And that goes back to the idea of allowing God to take us on a journey, allowing the divine to begin to begin to believe that perhaps, we are hearing the still small voice, and allowing that, being open enough that it could lead us in places that we wouldn't normally go, like you were just describing. It's like, and of course your daughters will have to, kind of pray about it and see if they feel in keeping with what their dad said, and if they do, then maybe they'll try that, but I love that though. Like I love anytime I see somebody who, they're they're taking a road, especially when they're taking a road that's maybe not exactly the way that other people are going about trying to do something. And you talk to them, you say, well, why are you doing it this way? And they say, it just feels like the right thing to do. Like, I love to hear that. Like, I love to hear that. It's like that means that that what is the primary thing that's kind of guiding them? Well, it's the divine, or at least their intent is toward listening to the divine, as it speaks within us. And I love that. I love to see people just in different parts of the earth just doing things. It's like in a time when everybody's sitting at home behind screens, it's like I just love, like I if I see some, volunteer group out in the fields in India somewhere helping some, tribe to, because that's what because they all went on some trip. It's like, I don't know if you're like, I've went on a few trips as a youth, as a young man in my 20s, kind of might call them pilgrimages or things like that. And those things were hallmarks. They were deeply, just deeply profound experiences. And of course, God can lead us on personal journeys. And so I just love it when I hear that. It's like I'm not looking for much. It's like I'm not looking for. It's like if I were in your situation, it's like it's not so much looking for, that one that you love to walk exactly in your footsteps, because they can't walk in your footsteps. And it's like they have to have a personal experience. And my deepest hope, my deepest desire for all that I love is that they will have a deeply rich experience with the divine, that he will touch their lives, that he will walk with them hand in hand. And that's deeply personal. And what I love too, I love it when I see somebody who I cherish very much questioning me. It's like I think that's wonderful. It's like because that means they're investors. If you've read my little green book, it's like, I just listened to this thing today, and it's like, it's so discouraging to me when I hear somebody who just gets up on their soapbox and tells the world how they and the people who believe like them are the only right ones on the planet, and how everybody else is going to hell. It's just,
Yeah.
it's so deeply disturbing to me. It's like, truly, like you're not open at all to the idea that you might be wrong about anything.
Right.
Seriously.
Right.
Like the one thing I think we all know is that we're wrong,
Yeah.
because we only have two eyes.
Yeah.
We only have 2 ears. We only have one brain. It's like, how could we possibly be 100% right? So I want to share one last thing, and then I'll hand it back to you. You had recommended watching Les Miserables, because you're talking about how much you enjoyed the one they made in 2012. And so I've been being super diligent. Like, I've been working really hard at my, all my stuff that I do, the poetry and everything else, trying to get stuff online. So I've been, and I've been like not allowing myself hardly any breaks and stuff. And I kind of hit a wall like yesterday. And it was like that not carnal, but the animal part of myself. It's
Sure.
like, I need comfort, and you're being like Mussolini, and or like a Hitler, and I'm not working for you anymore. And it was like, and I could feel it coming on, and it's like, I know myself well enough, like, you better not push the creature too much. Right. And it's like, that would be perfect. Watch that movie. And I went to go watch the movie, and it was so funny because it was $3.99 and I had $3.49. My name. I was like, oh well, I'm not watching the movie. Oh well. But today, I just found myself watching YouTube videos and different things, and just letting myself chill. And I ended up watching a bunch of the songs. I love Les Miserables, and it's weird that I write because I'm not a huge reader. And it's like, when I was in high school, I had to read. I was part of a honors, like, English class or something, and we had to read like a book every quarter, and I would like postpone to the end of the quarter and then read one of the Shakespeare sonnets, or one of the Shakespeare things, because it was short.
Right.
And not understand a word of it, and try to create a report that I didn't understand. Well, then one time I was like repentant, and I was like, okay, I got to read something. And someone told me how good Les Miserables was, and I got the abridged version, and I read it, and I remember how deeply moving it was for me, to read that story. Like, I mean, I kind of like, I cried for like a couple of days. Like, it would come upon me in waves of
Right.
of catharsis. It's one of the greatest works of all time. And it's just like, so I watched several of the songs and stuff today because they're free on YouTube. And and I watched all of that, and I was brought again to understand why this piece of art is so deeply moving. And it's because it's like, if you've ever read the book, I couldn't read the long one, it would kill me. But I read the abridged, and it's this story, it's this multi-layered story where it's like there's several subplots, and it's like, and it moves, and it's like, and this is what I feel like a good artist does, is it's like the artist looks at the world and doesn't just see like this narrow, like dogmatic kind of way of looking at the world. It's like he's looking at so many things, and he's this person and this person and this group of people. And you talked about how you went to Ramadan,
Right.
and all of that, because I think you get this. It's like, it was like you want to experience more of life so that you can understand it better. And it's like I watched those stories, and I was so moved by, and this is getting off the subject a little bit, but I was so moved by, there's this one song where it's One Day More.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Jean Valjean is singing and his daughter is singing, you know, and each person that sings is going through this very different experience. One person is about to go to war because they're just hurling themselves into, you know, and another person is like the lawman who's, you know, trying to catch the criminal, and the other, you know, and they're all, some of them are against each other, and you know, and one girl is the girl that you know is Cosette, who's in love with him, and then there's the girl who's in love with, who's also in love with him, which is Eponine, and they're all singing, and it's the soul song.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the song which captures all of our different experiences and the different ways that we come to life. And we all experience it differently. And we all are trying to serve God in the different ways, and they conflict. And we're all partially wrong.
Yeah.
And deeply flawed in our worship and in our pain. And all of them singing, all of them in pain.
Yeah.
All of them wondering what's going to come tomorrow. That story is so deeply moving. And then at the end, the song where he dies, and you know, and I can't remember exactly what was said, but it was like, oh, to love another person is to see the face of God.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, none of us get it right. None of us get it right. It's like, but love has to be at the core of all of it. It's like if there's anything that's true, it's to love. And what's at the core of love? Suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Christ suffered for us. I mean, you're best at loving. What are you going to do? You know, because like if you framed it and said, Jesus, I understand you're the best lover that's ever existed. What's your secret? And the first finger he'd put up is, I suffer well.
Yes, that's it. That's it. I can
like,
take.
Well,
what do you say? I can take it.
Yeah, and so what does that look like? Well, I'm kind when others are not kind to me. I'm gentle when others are not gentle to me, and so all these other attributes that come flowing out build upon that, where it's sacrifice. That he put others in front of his needs, and he was showing us the way. And so,
and we all do it imperfectly. We're trying to emulate that.
And that so I like something you were talking about is how, like, because I want to kind of a wrap up thought. Jonathan's talking about whatever it was that it occurred to me, because that's kind of been my theme, and I kind of shoved it there at the first part, but it was important for me to let the audience know who you're watching, and it's flawed people. And so Jonathan and I talked about that Saturday. We're just like, we both feel to just put it out there. We're not going to try to have a lot of pretense, that we are trusting whoever's supposed to watch this will watch it and get what they need, but we need it. So it's like, that's why we're brought to this. This is what Jesus brought us to. So he brings people to different things, and we find that we can use our gifts and the endowments that God has given us, our suffering, the things we've suffered for so long, and we wanted to give voice, like, go preach my gospel to every creature. Not yet, though. You're going to suffer some more. Now, nope. And so we've never really had an audience. And the funny thing is, if we both go, how many people are watching this? Our expectation is very few. But Jesus said something to me yesterday, Jonathan, and he said it with a visceral experience. So he said, go to this couple's wedding, because I was like, oh, I don't want to miss their wedding. But I'd lost the card. And this person texted me, he's busy. It's his wedding day. But he goes, blah, blah, whatever it was. And I said, oh, I'm so glad you contacted me, because I was looking all over for it. I thought I'd missed it. I thought maybe it was Friday, but it turns out it was Saturday. So I went there and I met these number of people, and the message was clear from them. Hey, I saw your stuff. And these are people who I don't see them. They don't put likes on anything that we do. Just like, and because Jesus had said, don't you worry about promoting these things. That's my job. So Jonathan and I aren't doing SEO searches, making sure that Google ranks us. We're not going to do that. We're counting on angels. If God wants to do that, that's what he does. And I'm grateful. I'd say, thank you, Jesus, because that's a lot of work. And I appreciate that. So if somebody said, oh, I want to serialize or whatever this thing you're doing, we'd go, okay, yeah, let's make a deal. And then they would do that. I'm like, that's fine. We're not opposed to that kind of thing, but Jesus is not putting that in our heart, that we have kind of a more manger scene operation where it's just like, it's the manger scene. Okay, this is where cows sleep, but we still show up. You can hear us, hopefully. And I'm fully comfortable with that because Jesus has trained me to that. But what I'm explaining right now, and I did it the first, is it's mostly just for other people to go, oh, so they know what they're doing? Yeah, you don't need to say, oh, you guys could do better if you did this and this. No, we know that. We know how to do better in terms of production value, but Jesus is leading us a different way, perhaps because he goes, you'll be wasting your time. Nobody's going to watch you. I told you, you guys are nobodies. And we go, okay, it's true. And that's what we seek to be, as nobodies who are going to tell everybody all about somebody named Jesus. And so that, I think, is hitting it, and that's why my energies is because I'm fully surrendering to that, and I will suffer it, Lord, but I'll be grateful for it. It's like, oh, you really are there. You're doing a work with us, and you really are giving us the yoke of freedom. You guys don't have to operate like other people. You don't have to edit things and be cool. You don't have to say, no, I'm going to show you this window and I'm going to give you interesting things to say. No, you just show up and do the best you can. Oh, well, that's easier. That's easier, Jesus. And then when he tells me the script, like he did, I woke up from my Jesus nap. Oh, and he told me during sacrament, you need to say some of these things, which I've said roughly. I mean, it's not smoothly. But once again, I'm not that worried about it, because I'm not worried at all, really, because I feel fine. I've been edified. I think you have, Jonathan, and I wanted to set a foundation. I knew it was going to be a little rugged because the thoughts were, but I feel like we've hit it, and we've laid the foundation. People understand. We're going to talk about suffer well, healed by his stripes, and my intent is to be healed by his stripes, to understand how I'm healed by his stripes, because I already know I am, that I'm healed. A lot of the healing that I've had since 2015, and of course prior to that, has been suffering related, doing things that I could enumerate them. Yeah, this was hard, this was hard, this was hard. And those are also, and it includes my family having to go through some suffering. But then I would show you the fruits, and you're actually seeing the fruits, because my relationship with Christ, I'm like, I can now talk about this because I now see the patterns. He has me ministering to people who are getting born again, and he's shown me, you see the patterns, Greg? I do. So now I can talk with some set of foundation about what it's like with Jesus. And then he'll continue to reveal things like he did this, suffer well, like phrases. Then it assembles the things that he has, and that's what he wanted, to assemble all this stuff. God, I got a lot of stuff that I'm supposed to share with these people. And he's like, try suffer well. Boom. I'm like, oh, it just got organized. So he gave me an organizational scheme that I can see, like, oh, it's all organized. And all these things he told me about previously, you're going to use movies to teach people. So like that one that I shared with you, Supa, Mr. Richie Supa, he has this this healing thing he does with addicts. And Jesus told me that I would be part of this therapy center, whatever, because the best therapist is Jesus, and then he wants to set up a center. Well, I thought you're helping him with Jesus TV. I am. And Jesus Radio. I am. And it looks like that's part of something that's even a wider spectrum, is a therapy center. And we're laying down the foundations of that. So as you're watching this movie, we're actually sketching out what the vision is. And so Jonathan and I have, if it was a planning session, tell us what your vision is. Jonathan and I are going to learn to suffer well. We've suffered well, and we've also suffered badly. So Jonathan is talking about cookie dough. Instead of how many bowls of cookie dough did you eat last night? None. You just, he found a better way. And of course, you'd already had that written on your heart. No, this is not the way, cookie dough, or porn time. Let's go do porn time, see how that works out. Taste that fruit. It still doesn't work. I wonder why. And instead, you found that you could feed your head with these, and that your beast was like, all right, that felt like a break. We can go on and do this Jesus TV. Because I have to do the same thing. You're working with a flawed vessel that's, the flesh is like, the spirit's willing, but the flesh says, so that you have to stop and feed it. You have to be nice to it, and because it is real. And so we will talk about those things in the upcoming episodes of how people have done that. And so you see Richie Supa, how is he dealing with his addiction? What did he learn through his suffering? He's learned that he continues to find more peace when he's helping others. He finds more purpose in his life. You can watch that yourself on his episode, but we're going to review many people who have had that same experience, so that we hear these different voices, like Jonathan said, saying some of the same things, like that song that you speak of with Les Mis, where they're all singing, they all have a similar root thing. They're trying to figure out how to resolve deep human things, whether it be a love interest or whether it be justice. I need justice. That's Jalvert, whatever his name is, and all these different things. And then you get these, and that's what I think this television program, Suffer Well, Healed by His Stripes, is going to do. Is we're going to go out and we're going to find in movies, we're going to find it in music. And for me, it's going to be a wonderful adventure. That's what we've framed out, Jonathan. We're just like, and so it's exciting to me. It's like, you're going to bring things. I'm going to bring things. Jesus will bring things, of course, and we'll discuss them and draw out that thing. Like, how did this person teach us about suffering well? What were some of the good things, the bad things? But it'll end up being instructive. And my heart desires it, like my heart desired understanding Ramadan. Like, yeah, who are these Muslim people? I didn't keep going there every year, but my understanding has, I right now have a friend Jesus introduced me to, and he's Muslim. And so I'm developing a language. I'll say, oh, I love how Allah does this. You're like, great, you worship Jesus. But he understands, and then he'll talk about Jesus. And so it's, God has a plan for each one of us, and you're actually living his plan, even if it's like Jonathan says, kind of a misdirect. Yeah, go be somebody. Seriously, Jesus? That's what you want to do? Yeah, go grab the bull by the horns. Woo, Jesus wants me to grab the bull by the horns. Now get stabbed by the horns. Oh, I forgot to tell you that was going to happen. Now I'm in the hospital. I'm never going to ride bulls again. But then Jesus will introduce you to your mate, or he'll do something. You'll learn how to heal somebody else. You're on an adventure, or you'll get addicted to pain meds, and you'll meet this guy named Richie Supa. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and it's also beautiful. It is. That's the paradox of the earth that we don't understand. It's like, the earth is about to change, and it's going to become something higher than it was before, and it's going to go through great, terrible pain, birthing pains to come to it. But just because it's coming to something higher doesn't mean that God didn't love it before. Now, God doesn't condone sin, but there's something beautiful about this deeply flawed, wrong-headed world that we live in, that God truly does love. And
he's in the storm. He's in the storms of our life.
Yeah.
And he doesn't love storms. He loves us, but he'll allow storms. He'll bring storms. You call it what you want. We're in for a storm that's coming. And that's what Jesus has told Jonathan and I as well. And we're looking forward to it because.
Well, I think a lot he wants us to watch. It's like, forgive me, finish your thought.
No, that was it. Yeah, you're good.
Oh, just I've some of my evangelical friends, I like what way they put it. They talk about being in like right relationship with God.
Yes.
That's what he really wants. And I've liked that phrasing just because it's like I kind of think that that's really what he wants, because once we're in a relationship with him, it doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be like, like repent or you're going to hell. It's like once we've decided to repent and we're now talking through that with him, trying to repent, it's like there can be all sorts of grace as we're getting there. It's just like it's and then we're in a relationship with him, and he's working us through. He's seeing us through. You said something that made me think about that. Just that,
well, and I like that you did, because I was at church asking the father-in-law of a friend of mine, Mike Black, and he had an accident, and Jesus allowed that accident. I don't think Jesus caused it, so I'm not going to get in that quandary, but there's things that God's purposes and permits. Well, he permitted a tractor to fall on this guy, and his life has been seriously changed, and the community came together. But what happened to him, and I've prayed for him, and I do in even this moment. But I was going to say to the father-in-law, but it was a little too spicy. Wow, Jesus will go to great lengths to get closer to people. And that's what I really meant. Like, he will create events, because I lost a mama when I was 9 years old. And this is what Jesus told me. He said, speak the truth, Greg. And I said, you took away my mom when I was 9 years old. And because I was speaking of the lie in Jesus, and I had to speak the truth. And so I started listing these things that have been really hard in my life, because I was trying to resolve what happened in 2015. Whoa, you had me lose my job. Now, he used my weakness, so 100% it was my fault, but 100% it was Jesus's doing as well. Well, how can that be, Greg? That's the God we worship. He works in these in this realm where it can be both simultaneously, and he's in it. And that's the best I can tell you, is he's emphasized that your mind cannot understand these things fully, but understand I am always there. As he says in the scriptures, if I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I ascend into heaven, you are there. In other words, there's no place you can go where he's not there. I'm quoting from The Chosen, by the way, which is a movie television program that Jesus makes, but it makes a very good point. And so that's how I see with my new child's eye. I'm like, wow, Jesus, you'll leave the 99 and be a very aggressive savior. If somebody's wandering around just minding their own business, not Jesus' business, but just minding their own business, watch out, because your Father's coming. The Father of your salvation, he's coming for you. And guess what's probably coming? To get your attention. And that's what parents do. A good parent, that's like, I'm just going to give my kids everything they want all the time, always. Well, that's the devil. That's the devil. because that will produce a devil child. That child's getting set up for some heavy suffering. Prison is one of those things, and that's not a good idea. And most people know that. No, you can't. Well, you can't do that. Let them do anything they want. Yeah, that child's not going to live very long. I can tell you that. And so, okay, so then what do you need to do? Does it involve deprivation? Yeah, they have to wait. They have to eat that spinach before they eat those cookies. And in fact, we decided to get rid of sugar. Well, that's suffering for some kids. Like for me, that's like, Jonathan, no, I can't put up with that. I gotta have, you're saying no Snickers ever? Because Jesus actually did that to me. I said, Jesus, I'll give up my diet to know you, right? And it's been a process, but he said, you know how you don't drink whiskey, Greg? Because you told me not to. You know how you don't smoke marijuana? Yeah, because you told me not to. You know how you don't have sex with people who aren't married to you? Because you told me not to. I don't want you to have M&Ms or Snickers or anything like unto it. For how long? Forever. And I'm like, okay, because he'd taken me far enough that I'm like, and I asked him, I said, Jesus, I can't do it myself. So I did the Alcoholics Anonymous thing. I was like, I'm gonna put it on the altar. And apparently I had qualified for that, because then he gave me the strength to do that, to be serious about my thing. And I've done it. And you know, what I asked for, Jesus, was I want to lose 70 pounds. Did you not hear me, God? I said, I want to lose 70 pounds. I didn't say I wanted to give up these things, but I knew what he's doing. And I'm like, let's hurry this along. And he said, no, appreciate what you're doing. What you're doing is so hard. It'd be so hard for people, and it's hard for you. And I said, yes. So he's respecting my flesh. He's saying, let's not get going too fast here. But I know probably the next thing. No, but then he introduced me to this guy who says, you're going to eat more, but you're going to eat the right things. He gave me this China study or whatever. He says, you're going to end up eating more than you ever have. And he fed me this bowl of this thing he eats every day for breakfast. Oh my goodness. I've never eaten such a big breakfast. I'm just like, I said, my wife would start being full about right here. I just held up some spoonfuls because this was very heavy stuff. And, but I realized that, and I said, I am going to do this, because this bowl, and I'll tell you about this, Jonathan, because you remember how I told you about the Jesus shower, the cold shower? This bowl is a ritual that has a built-in, at least for me right now, suffering. Because if I asked you to eat that bowl, you would have to go back to your chocolate chip eating days, because my goodness. And that guy I was talking with him and I thought, oh, it looks like I'm going to beat him. No, he was done. And well, I just want to tell you this story because it was kind of funny. He said he went hiking on Timpanogos, and they don't have bathrooms along the way. So there's this place where people go off the trail and they take a poo, right? And he noticed his poo was twice as high as everybody else's poo. And I said, you won the poo contest. But the volume of food he takes in, but because he's taking in good food and very little anything, nothing. But this guy, I think we'll have, if Jesus will let us someday, maybe he'll tell his story, but he was near death. See, Jesus had motivated this guy to give in to him. So he was born again through great suffering, and his children missed 20 years of their father because his health things were just so extreme. Lost his teeth, but Jesus had him born again, and then Jesus introduced me to him, and there was many things that I am and yet had learned from him. I've learned some stuff, and this was just recent. So yeah, that's what I want to say, is that there is a plan for all of us. Yeah, I think that's the summary.
Well, I think that's probably a good episode.
Yeah, my flesh is like, don't do any more, but I've enjoyed this. There's a lot of build up to this. So emotionally, if I'm not my best self, it's because it's just like, oh, this is it. and I can feel it. I know it's like, now I'm not going to let go of this. We'll keep building upon this. This is the foundation. The suffer well is the foundation upon which we will build. And it's important to me because it helps me understand the suffering in my life, but it's going to help feed other people that are trying to make sense, because that was honestly a big surprise and a kind of a uncomfortable surprise of getting closer to Jesus. Like, ooh, suffering's required. Like, let's talk about that, Jesus, because if I'm going to go street preach, and he does, he says, tell it like it is. Now he's given us a whole television program. All right, we're going to tell it how it is. And that will be, so Jonathan, I've talked about fundraising. Well, here's what you're going to hear from us is we're going to tell you like it is. Like, you know, I suppose if we were Dallas Jenkins, you say, well, I got this big house and so forth. So here I am. Jonathan's going to go, well, I live in a van. You just heard my account went to $349. Jesus didn't want me to watch for $399. And I had just sent Jonathan some money for his phone so that he could have extended, so we could do the gigabytes. In other words, Jonathan and I are perfectly fine. We're on the manna plan, and Jesus has taken perfect care of us. And unless Jesus tells you to, keep your money, keep your stuff. But if he tells you to, I want to help those guys out, then we are not opposed to having our suffering relieved. Okay.
Well, and since you brought it up, I'll just say this before we leave. You know, it's like, this will be interesting just to see how it goes. A friend of yours said something to me the other day that a friend of mine now too, Lyman. But anyways, just was talking about how there's a new economy coming, and this is just a chance for us to talk about it. It's like there's a new way of doing things, and Greg and I are just getting started. And our basic philosophy, like we work on this, like this is like a lot of what we do. You know, like
hours and hours.
I'm writing
days.
hours and hours and hours, and it's like, and it's not like something we really like choose to do. Almost, it's almost like it's kind of doing it to us, and we just we can't help ourselves.
No.
And so like we're doing this, and it's like what your friend said was that it's like kind of the new way things will work, and it's already happening in the world, is that you'll go out and you'll work hard at your work, but not because you've already made arrangements on how you're going to get paid. That's the way it's worked forever, is like, you know, well, you know, I need you to do this. And so, you know, and person says, well, I'll only do this if you pay me so much. It's like we've kind of just taken that all out. You know, it's like we're doing this and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to do it whether we get paid or not. And it's like, and we're just trusting, you know, that it's like, you know, and it's like that God's going to provide for us. And it's like, and we're trusting that, you know, that the means will come. And it's like we reap where we don't sow, and we sow where we don't reap. It's like we may be helping you guys out, and the means to, you know, to I don't know, pay for the next. There's so many things. You guys, anybody listening knows there's a million things that need to be paid for.
And if we were egg producers, then we
somewhere else. But sorry, just the end of my comment was just that we're just trusting, and we're going to keep having this conversation with everybody there. And it's like, if someone feels impressed to help, well, there's a million ways you can help. We're allowing you, you know, if you feel impressed, like God wants you to help, we're allowing you to decide, you and God to decide how you feel impressed to help. It may be technical, it may be financial, it may be otherwise. But you know, like I'm okay that I couldn't watch the video. It's like I got food in the fridge. I'm okay, and if I have to go to the food bank this week, that's all right. Yeah, you know, it's like all right.
Yeah, we don't mind being beggars for Christ. Christ apparently dressed up as beggars. He says, "When saw I thee a stranger and fed thee not?" So Jesus is amongst us, and we don't mind playing that role. It's difficult for our families, but that's how Jesus made us. And both of us have found, I can't do anything but this. It's like we've sold our souls. You know, like if we sold our souls to the devil, I
went down to the crossroads. We could write a song about that.
Yeah, that's right. I sold my soul to the devil. Jonathan, I can't help but pimp out girls. I just can't. I want to stop. I know it's wrong, but I made that deal with the devil, and he says, you got to be a good devil guy. But that's not who we made a deal with. Somehow along the way, we made a deal with a good master. And so we don't have a like Jonathan's saying, a predefined thing. So if I do this for you, Jesus, then you'll give me this and this and this. Nope, you're just going to do it because you know I'm good. Okay. And we've said okay because we have found out that the other way doesn't work. And we're learning about this way actually does work, and it has. So we're alive, and we have sufficient for our needs: food, clothing, shelter, tools, somebody to love. And that's the God that we worship. And I know that part of what we're doing, Jonathan and I, is training for what he says, the future economy, for what's coming in the bridge of that, because it's focused my intellect on, and my heart on that very thing: food, clothing, shelter, tools, somebody to love. You got those today, Greg? Yes, I do. Well, that's called manna. Well, in Babylon, Lord, they would stack up a bunch of this stuff so that in case you didn't come through. Well, what are you going to do, Greg? I'm just going to count on you tomorrow. And he does have us do some planning here and there, but mostly we're mostly.
You there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, mostly we're traveling beforehand, not knowing the things which we should do.
Right.
Like even this episode, and we're going to trust that God will put into our minds whatever people need to hear, because a lot of this stuff we already know. We're just sharing it again because, like Mr. Supa, Richie Supa, we want to now, because we've learned certain things through our suffering, to help others. And so I know Jonathan's heart's like mine. We're turned towards our children. It's like, who are you actually trying to talk to? We have no power to make our children watch this. And if I tried, they're like, they resist it. But that's between them and God. And so it's going to be easily available to you. But I care about my children and my grandchildren, and 500 years from now, the people that I'm related to that may need this, because they may be suffering even more than I. And so suffer well is what grandpa or great grandpa had to say. And so back to Jonathan and I, the spirits told us, don't hold back. You're not going to become grovelly beggars, but you're also just going to tell people about where you are. You're not. So both of us are probably forerunners of a culture where there's no poor among us, because the poor will speak up and go, hey, here's my need, but they are fine with Jesus leaving that because they're okay with suffering, just what we're talking about. Because I don't want Jesus taking care of needs I have that need to go unheeded for a while, because I've had many of those things. They make me cry out to God. Do you know what it's like to have a low bank account? It's turned me into a person who's almost praying always. Jesus, in gratitude too. He's trained me not to just keep repeating, you know how low our funds are, to repeat how thankful I am. I have food. Yes, you're right, Lord. I have water. I have clothing. I have friends. Oh, so many people that love me. I am so blessed. And hence, I really authentically feel like, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I feel awesome. I'm not in rehab right now with Steve Tyler. I'm thankful for that. I didn't have a pathway of that kind of addiction. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm on Jesus TV. How cool is that? We're on Jesus TV. I know of lots of TV personalities. They're not on Jesus TV. They could change the name of their television program immediately, but that's not what they're on. And so I'm honored that Jesus chose us for Jesus TV and to roll out this television program. And so that's what I hope I exude. It's not the spirit of a beggar. It's like, nah, I'm good. Yeah.
Well, so that, and I think, we'll talk about it now and then. And we don't really know what we're doing, like we said. And and let's just kind of leave it at that, we'll keep talking about it. And we'll just see what God brings, because I have the feeling that there's answers that we just don't see quite yet as to how this will all work out.
No, that's
and
right.
maybe there's someone coming along who will be like, well, why don't you try this or something? I don't know. Anyway, we're just gonna let it go and believe that the answers and the means, whatever they are, will come.
Yeah,
and in the meantime, like you said, we have food, clothing, shelter.
Yep.
Somebody to love.
And if it didn't work for us, then we wouldn't keep getting on. So the thing is, Jonathan and I, it's like you'll continue to see us because it's working. And that's why my relationship with Jesus. Why do you keep seeking more Jesus? Because it's working for me. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't working for me. And so it's working good enough that, and in fact, very well, that I'll just keep doing it, even on a low plane. And so, yeah, we can let it sit at that, but it's been very important for my mind to have that written on my heart. It's like, God is over all. He knows what our needs are. He knows what your needs are, Jonathan, my needs, the people listening. He's not an idiot. He's aware. And he's attending to those, and he may use mortal angels who somebody goes, for some reason, and I didn't even like your program, but for some reason I felt like I need to send you some criticism, or I didn't like your program and I've got some junk. You can have some junk, I guess, sell it at your garage sale. Or I have some friends. Personally, I don't want to help you. I don't even want to do this. But Jesus said, go tell your friends about this program and see if they'll support it. And so then you're not coming up with sweaty wads of cash. Somebody else is. And you had to do the awkward thing, because that's what Jesus has me do so many times, is awkward things. Like, well, this would be awkward. Could you help this person over here? And lo and behold, Jesus does his magic. And maybe it's just like Jesus tells me I should share this out on my Facebook. Do it. But you're not going to hear us go, oh, click like us. No, Jesus isn't. That's a different economy. Oh, click on. And I think it's a good one. I love a lot of the people I listen to. I get it. They're like, hey, click the notification bell because I need that. Well, we don't. You know how to get hold of us. There's Facebook Messenger. We referenced Jonathan's site, my site. And yeah, that's, we won't really go over just what I talked about right here. You're going to see us in future episodes mention things, but it's not going to be a big thing. But I'm glad to kind of get it out of the way. It's like, here's the model. What's your model, guys, for monetizing this? No, it's not monetizing really. It's just like, if people want to help.
We're doing it, and 100% we're saying, if you feel impressed to somehow help in some way, it's like, we definitely both have moments where we're crying to God saying, well, help. Yeah. And if he happens to tell you to help, then awesome,
then
but
do it.
And please don't. Yeah, it's like, we're going to do this. We're probably, whether we're here doing it or doing it somewhere else, we're going to do this like till the day we die.
Yes.
Both of us, even if we're not doing it together.
Yes.
And so it's like we're going to keep doing what we're doing because we love God. We know he's blessed us, and we love people that we don't yet even know. And we want to get to know people who are like us, because it's kind of hard to be alone sometimes. It's like, we both, it's like we both have the altruistic part of us, and we have the part of us that likes friends, and that's probably more human. It's like who knows how much of all of it mixes to be the thing that makes us do this, but we're doing what we are really.
Yes.
And I think that's the bigger struggle, is it's like, it's a lot easier. My life was a whole lot easier when I was this thing and I did this thing.
Yes.
My life was, in some ways, it was harder in other ways, but in a lot of ways it was easier. It was like, because I could go and I could work my work week and come home and be the thing that I was at home. And it's like, but I think Greg's in this position too, where it's like what I am and what I do have kind of,
Yeah.
and they're just like one thing now. And it's really uncomfortable sometimes to realize that what you are and what you do is one thing, and that it doesn't really make any money.
Yes.
And then it doesn't really, and I'm really grateful because like I have a little job I do, that, well, I actually not going to say exactly what I do, but I'm on call 24/7, and it pays me like a little stipend, and most of that goes to, well, almost all of it really goes in a certain place because of the people I love and all that. But it's, point is like I have this little stipend. It's nice, and Greg has like a little stipend from the little things that he does. So we're okay, but it's like we're just trusting whatever you call it. We call it God, I think.
Yeah.
Greg says Jesus more often than I do. And you may say the universe, I don't know why, but we're just trusting that there's something bigger than us that loves us and loves you. And that's who we serve. And that's why too, I think, it's like we're not really starting a Patreon account or anything like that where you get special things because you decide to help, because it's like then we'd be working for you.
Yeah, that's
Like,
right.
so wait a second. So you get special content and now we have to do something every week. And it's like, well, what if Jesus wants me to do something else? What if God's, it's like, no, we serve, we try to serve a
Yes.
higher power. And so so we're just trusting that, it's like if we work in his service, that something will come around. Anyways, I think we're going a little bit long, but
Well said. I just had one more thing to add there, is that I like that understanding that there's other models where you like, uh, in order to do this, you guys need to, if we're going to keep making these episodes, we need to have this funding. Well, we don't need your funding. In order to make this, we could be homeless, almost literally homeless. And
some people would say I am.
yeah, exactly. You're about
Go
as
ahead,
close as
sorry.
I get to homeless. And we could probably spend 20 minutes asking for money to support the structure that we have. So God has set this up so it's so low, technical wise, that it's manageable, meaning we're able to be who we are. And this is the direction God's taken us. And I like that we are in a position where, as far as both of us know, we'll just be doing this the rest of our life, ministering to others through not just talking about suffering well, but ourselves leading by example. So part of the thing is you're going to hear about our life story, because that's what God says, that you have to lead by example. So you're going to hear what we do. So even down to this awkward thing, well, are you going to beg for some money? Yeah, I'm going to beg for some money, but in a different way. Like, don't send me your money. Do not send Jonathan any money unless Jesus tells you to. Now you go find the television program that they add that qualifier. I love that qualifier because you know what it does? It frees me up. And I trust it, and I've seen it work, and I'm not doing it as some strategic gimmick. It's like, I don't care. In fact, no, I do care. Don't send us money unless Jesus tells you to. And then when that happens, and it has happened, I love it, because I'm like, I know who that money came from. And then it's not such a mystery, like, oh, why'd they give this? Yeah, you better find out. That's working, Greg. No, we're not going to do that. Oh, let's see if we can. Yeah, we need to say these things more. We're not doing that. You just heard our strategy. It's like, we're going to serve the master. And then the master did tell us, tell them about your situation. And so as we go along, and you see Jonathan in this big mansion, then we'll describe, Jonathan says, yeah, we had a millionaire send money. And so this is where I've always wanted to live. And I'm suffering well. Maybe that's his story. I don't know. But it's, yeah, I've come to the end of that. I just wanted to say that I'm grateful that God has, just what you said, allowed us to do who we are, given us a venue, and it's a humble one, and I like it. It's manageable for us both. And I do know it's an example for others who maybe think that they don't know how they could actually ever share their gift, because there's a lot of people who do that. And they don't know, like, so you could do it just like you guys are doing, because I watch you and you guys aren't very good. Woo, good. You got the message. Yeah, just read a poem and talk about it, and have it. And the main thing we have is we're not trying to gather millions of people. If God wants to do that, that's fine. We'll bring our loaf, bring our fish. Jonathan's got one, I got one. And then if God wants to go, I'm making 5,000 of these. So he can do what he wants with this episode. But I like this episode, and I turn it over to God. Anything else you want to say, Jonathan, before we wrap you up?
No.
Well, thanks for joining us. And episode 2 will be next week. I think once a week we'll do these. It could, we're open. If Jesus wants us to do twice a week or once every couple weeks, that's fine. But I think once a week is what we can manage comfortably right now. And because we're also doing another television program, as I mentioned, Poetry and Prophecy. So sometime this week we'll be doing another poem. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, God is with you till we meet again. Indeed.